There is a concept I learned about a very long time ago now, and it's a concept to do with social interaction. I call it playing the game, right? And it goes something like this. Let's say someone, a friend of yours, bought a nice fancy t-shirt, right? And said, "Oh, mate, look at this really nice t-shirt. It's really cool, isn't it? Guess how much it cost?" Right? Now, the kind of socially autistic person might go along and think, okay, let's try and win this game here, right? Let's try and get the correct answer, right? And they're not really playing the social game, but they're playing the logic game. They're thinking, okay, that's a nice shirt, but he wants us to guess the price, so it's probably cheaper than it looks, right, in terms of price. So I'm going to guess really low in an effort to get the right answer, right? But if you guess low and say, okay, oh, is it £10 or $10, right? And then they're like, oh, no, it was 40, but like that's a good price, right? And then you kind of have this awkward situation where you've kind of undermined what he was trying to say in terms of this is a really nice shirt and it should be expensive, but it wasn't, and it was a good deal, but then you've kind of undercut what he's trying to communicate there, right? But let's replay that scenario again, right? Your friend comes to you and says, "Look at this shirt, it's so cool, it's nice. Guess how much it cost?" And you're aware of that game, the social game that he's trying to play there, and you're like, "Oh, mate, it looks like it would have cost like $100, $200, right?" And then he says, "No, it cost me 40. Isn't that amazing?" And then you get to react like that. 40? No way. That's amazing. That's really cool, right? So you play the social game instead of playing the logic game and like kind of calculating in that way, in the logic sense. So I call it playing the game instead of calculating the answer. That's what I mean when I say you should play the game in social situations, right? And there are plenty of examples like that in society, in social interactions, that to a certain type of individual might seem like you're being fake, right? Because if you were actually trying to get the right answer, then you would say a different answer. But it's not a lie, it's just you're playing along with what they're trying to do. They're not trying to get you to get the right answer. They're trying to like get you to play this game of like, this is a amazing thing I want to celebrate. So I want to have the interaction with you to celebrate that with you, right? That's what they're trying to do. So to facilitate that, you need to play along and play your role. Guess a high number, because then they will be happier for that, right? If you try to calculate the right answer, then things will be sadder for everyone, to put it in very simple terms, right? And this is something I think about a lot. Something I see going wrong a lot with interactions that I witness around me. And it's something so simple to switch, right? To just notice, okay, am I just trying to calculate an answer or am I trying to play the game, right? Because emotional connection and fun in those kind of connections is emotional rather than logical. So play the game in an emotional way rather than a logical way. And I know a lot of guys, a lot of men have a hard time with this because we are logical creatures. We like to tinker with things rather than people and events and emotions. We're not naturally, inclined in that direction, so it's more difficult. And I found it difficult myself, but it is certainly possible. It is certainly possible to get to a place where you are better with social interactions and better emotionally as a human being. So that's something that you can kind of develop in your world, right? And like I know it was something that I deliberately worked upon. Someone gave me that bit of advice, and I was like, yeah, that's something that I do. I need to change that about myself. And over time, I learned to kind of change that. And yes, it did feel fake at first, but it's kind of the fact that you're not used to it, not that you're not being real or truthful. It's the fact that you are learning a new pattern of behavior. It's like learning to walk, right? We don't call babies fake for learning to walk because they've never walked before. It's a natural progression of what they're trying to do. And in the same way, we can't call someone fake for practicing a new behavior because that's a natural progression of what they're trying to do, right? And there are terms like fake it till you make it, which make this kind of hard to market or advertise here. I don't like that word, fake it till you make it, or the phrase fake it till you make it, I should say. I prefer something more like embody the person that you want to be, right? Strive towards the person that you want to be, something like that. That's a lot better than fake it till you make it. That has a marketing issue, that phrase, right? If I could say it in one pithy sentence, I would say, strive to be the person you want to be, right? And obviously that person is going to be different to who you are today. And that isn't being fake. That isn't lying. That isn't being untruthful. That's a natural progression of behavior. Change isn't incongruence, or in other words, would be change isn't lying to the world around you. Change isn't being duplicitous. So I'm just coming up with complicated words here. How do I say this in simple terms? I guess that's it. Change isn't being untruthful. Change isn't a lie to the people around you. That's how I would say it in simple terms, right? And yeah, that should be celebrated. Change should be celebrated in people, right? Because, well, we get comfortable too much as human beings. Of course, when things don't change, it's nice. It's like, oh, everything's staying the same. Everything is calm, peaceful, right? But it is the interesting times that often bring along positive things. Negative things too, but if we can take control of that action and drive it in a direction that we like, and a direction that is helpful to others and helpful to ourselves, then we can take that change into places that are better than the places we were yesterday. And that's why change can be good. There's another thing I want to talk about. I often talk to younger people and I have conversations. I'm wondering if I should say this. Okay, I teach maths and science and things like that. And some of the kids will ask me sometimes, how's your half term going? Right? And things like this. So a kid just now, how's your half term going? I'm like, well, I don't get a half term, right? I just keep working through that kind of period. Half term, if you don't know what that is, in the UK, there's a school holiday, which is a mid-term holiday, right? We call it half term instead of mid-term. I think mid-term is the American version of that, I guess. So half term, if you say, oh, how's your half term? That means how's your holiday, your half term holiday. So she said, how's your half term? I'm like, well, I don't have a half term. I just work through it. And she seemed very curious. She's like, oh, so do you work all the time? I'm like, well, yeah, pretty much, right? Don't you get any free time? I do. Like, don't you spend any of that with friends? Like, do you go anywhere? I said, yes, on occasion. Sometimes I do, yes. She says, is that what life is like after you grow up? Do you work all the time? And I said, well, there are some who work more, there are some who work less, and the more you work, the better your life gets. That's what I said to her. In basic terms, in simple terms. Of course, there's details to that are kind of, it kind of means that is not necessarily true all the time, but in general, that's a principle that I kind of would say would suffice for a girl of that age at that time, right? Just to give a quick answer. I couldn't really get into details at that point in my day. And it made me think. There are people who after school or after uni or after their educational part of their life, they just do the minimum required. They just kind of get a part-time job, live paycheck to paycheck. Maybe they live on benefits and they're not striving for something more because what they have right now it's just okay. It's fine. And so the message I wanted to get across to her was, well, if you wanted to work more than that, then your life has a potential to become better. So what I meant when I said the more you work, the better your life gets, that's what I meant. right? So the more willing you are to kind of put that hard work in, the better your life circumstances often become. And I was really wanting to kind of explore that a little bit more, but of course I couldn't really get into so much detail with her at that time of the day. But what I would have said is, of course, there is a perception of things, right? Because students at that age, most of work to them seems so boring, seems so laborious. It seems unnecessary at times, and it just doesn't do anything for them apart from cause misery. And like, they know in some part of their brains that they have to do it for some reason. Oh, it's good for, I need to get good grades. That's a good thing, right? But they don't really know what's beyond that. Some of them might know, okay, good grades lead to a good job, right? But then they don't know what a good job is for, or what that even means, and so very few children know what they're on that path for, and they don't necessarily have the sense of purpose, right? They might have a sense of accomplishment of like getting something done, but they don't know why they're getting that something done, right? And so I feel like that's a very missing part of the education system, or perhaps something that they just learn over time as they grow up. That, just because I work all the time, it doesn't mean that I'm sad, for example. It doesn't mean that I suffer all the time, right? I imagine in their heads, if I work all the time, it must be similar to, constantly doing maths papers all the time, or maths questions all the time, right? But of course, it isn't like that. Work can feel good to people, right? It isn't as if I need holidays because my work fulfills me, right? And the holiday might be a cherry on top, a nice time for me to explore other things in my life aside from work. But the work isn't necessarily a bad thing. It isn't as if I have to, crack the whip at myself to make myself work more. It's something that I'm drawn to because I love doing it. And I would imagine I'd have a hard time communicating that to a kid because they might not understand what that means. It might be something I might have to teach them over a couple of days to say, okay, well, imagine you're building a house, right, that you want to live in, and you want this house to be big, and you want to be proud of this house. You would enjoy the experience of building that house because you're going to live in it, and it was going to satisfy you to build it, right? Can't you imagine the work that you put into that house being work that you want to do, work that you're happy to do, work that you can be proud of when it's done? And in imagining that pride in the future, be happy because of that pride, right? So it'd be something like that. And of course, with the adults I work with in my career online, it's a lot more applicable, right? It's a lot more kind of communicable, of course. But it's still something I have to remind people of, right? It's still something that adults have to deal with. I'm in a career that I don't like. I want to switch. I'm too scared. I'm comfortable here. Changing would be very uncomfortable for me. Changing would be scary for me. I really want to go into that career, but I've got this, career I built up over here. Maybe that would have been wasted time, right? That kind of sunk cost fallacy there. And so as much as it is kind of a simple concept to explain to a child, and as much as they struggle to understand that, it's a struggle that continues into adulthood in the fact that they might know that something could be good for them, that work can be happy for them, but they won't make that change because they're too scared, right? And it's interesting how that happens sometimes, right? And it's a nice one to explore. In my online career of like coaching this kind of thing, I coach productivity and I coach kind of a little bit of lifestyle beyond that. It's often the thing that comes up. right? I don't like this degree I'm doing. I don't like this career I'm doing. And it's a scary thing to change. And I've done it many times in my life, and it hasn't made it less scary just because I did it. It doesn't mean I'm like the expert of changing careers. I wanted to pursue a degree in engineering, and then I didn't want to do that anymore. And switching that to do something that was very different, business, was a huge switch for me. And I was very scared, and I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know if it was the right thing to do or not. But I just bit the bullet and made the choice. It was scary, it was terrifying. A lot of my friends didn't know what the right answer was. A lot of my friends and like family and people close to me didn't know what the right answer was. People had their opinions, and people had very different opinions, right? And no one knew what the right answer was for me. No one turned around and told me, yes, this is the right answer. This is definitely the right answer. You know, people like really recommended engineering, people really recommended business, but at the end of the day, they didn't know what was best for me, right? In fact, if I had to pick one side, an aggregate that everyone recommended to me, it was engineering. But I myself really wanted to change to business. So what could I do? And at that point, you've got to listen to your heart. Because if I didn't do that, I would always wonder, what if? What if I did change? What if I did do that? What if I did start that business? What if I did start posting on YouTube? What if I did start that podcast? What if I did, start salsa dancing? What if I did start playing basketball? What if I did start traveling around the world? These amazing opportunities that you might leave behind if you just sit comfortably in your room, in your home country, and not doing anything particularly exciting or different from the status quo. It's a miserable life, especially when you think about what could have been, right? There are two types of pain in the world. There's the pain of regret, and there is the pain of improving yourself, the pain of change, right? So there's the pain you have of not making that choice, not starting that business, not talking to that girl. And there's the pain you feel when you do that thing, when the business is hard, when talking to girls is hard, when starting a new sport is hard, when starting to learn to dance is hard. But then a year down the line, who's happier, right? One person lives with regret. One person has a new skill that he's learned. One person might have a business that's going well. One person might have a girlfriend, soon to be wife. There's two paths you can take there. So yeah, while there is such a thing as work-life balance, there is also such a thing as work satisfaction and work fulfillment. And so it's important to find that in your life. It's so, so important, because work is the thing that you will probably be doing the most in your adult life. You'll spend 8 hours sleeping on average. You'll spend 8 hours at work on average. And the 8 hours that are left will be spent doing other tasks, eating, spending time with friends. But the majority of your life will be spent working. That's a fact that you can rely upon. So choose wisely. And if you didn't choose right, if you chose a choice and it turned out to be wrong, it's not the end of the world. It's never too late. Whether you are 20 and halfway through your degree, whether you are 30 and 10 years down into a career path that you don't like, whether you're 50 and almost retired, it's not too late. Start something new. Do that thing you always wanted to do. Because life is short. There is no tomorrow. You don't get more years on the end of your life to, try that thing you never tried. You don't get to be younger. Your younger years are past you and you leave them behind. So do the things today, right? Ideally, do them yesterday, but you can't do that. So choose the present moment and do it now. Take action now, right? There is something in your mind, I know, that you want to do and you're procrastinating on. You're putting it off. You're thinking, I'll do that some other time in my life. But will you? Ask yourself, really, will you? Right? Anything like this. It could be hobbies, it could be work, it could be career. But with my clients, what I talk about a lot is career, because that is the most important one. The work that you do is the most important part of your life. And it's the time that you spend the most. So choose wisely. Because waking up from that stagnation and looking up around you and thinking, where did that time go, is such a scary thought in my mind. And I've seen it in other people. They've lived boring lives and they suddenly get up and think, what happened to those 30, 40, 50 years of my life where I did nothing, where I did the things I didn't want to do, where I just stayed comfortable because I was too scared to change. And if you're not familiar with those kind of stories, I would highly recommend you go read those stories. Right? There are many stories that are like that. I've heard them from, family and friends and books I've read, things like this. There's a book I read recently called The Unlikely Pilgrimage of Harold Fry. And it's about a man who goes on a journey, and throughout this journey, he reminisces about his life and all the regrets he's had through that time. And one of the regrets he's had is the fact that he didn't really do much with his time. He didn't really go anywhere. He didn't really do anything. And he wasn't the best person to the people around him as well. So if there is something that you need to do now, do it. Stop waiting. Stop procrastinating. Just get it done. Put in that first step. File the paperwork of that decision you need to make. For example, I was studying engineering, right? And I wanted to change to business. I nudged my friend. I said, mate, we were in a lecture. The professor was describing his job. He was describing the fact that he would measure engine parts and the tolerance of the measurements of those engine parts. And I said, I do not want to be here. I don't want to do this degree. I told him. He kind of chuckled like, ha, right. As if I was joking. But I was like, I'm serious. Right? So that very week, I went and talked to the heads of department of engineering and at business. They gave me some papers I need to sign, to fill out. And within that week, I handed in those papers and made that choice. I talked to many people that week. Friends, family, people close to me. And a lot of them disagreed, but I had to make the choice. So I made the choice and sent it off. And that was that. Make that choice. And of course, yes, I thought about it for a while before that week, right? It's not as if you should make choices willy-nilly, but if there's something that really claws at your heart and really you need to do that thing, then do it. Make the jump. Opportunities don't come along every day. When that boat sails by, jump onto it. It might never come along again. Age is the perfect example, right? Do those active things that you want to do in your life. Because when you're 60, when you're 70, that's not going to be as possible as it was when you were 20 or 30, right? So if you want to hike mountains, if you want to, be a stuntman, if you want to kind of go mountain biking, do that in your 20s and 30s so that you won't regret it when you're 60 or 70, because you might not be able to try it when you're that age. I wonder what to tell kids who ask me for advice like this, because I'm just teaching them maths, and they ask me, what is life like as an adult? What can I expect? Right? And all I can say, it is equally as beautiful and terrifying. So yes, it's hard. Yes, it can be scary, but it can also be amazing. It can be wonderful. It's freeing. You are your own person, and that is as freeing and lovely and as terrifying at the same time. But it's beautiful, and you will enjoy it. You will have amazing times, and you will have hard times. I won't lie to you. But in aggregate, it will be fun. And the more intentionality you put towards that, the more fun it will be. Right? And if you let things go out of hand, if you become lazy, and if you become the kind of person that allows that misery to get into their lives, then it will be harder. Of course. So if there is something that you know that you need to do it. If there is something that you know that you want to do it. If there is something that you know you need to think about it. If there is a decision that needs to be made and it requires some thinking, then that's fine. But take action, make a kind of action step towards that. Even if it is writing a note to yourself saying, this is something that I would like to do, but it will cost this and it will give me this. There's pros and there's cons. So I'll leave you with that. In adult life, there is a beauty it is both the most terrifying thing in the world and the most beautiful thing in the world at the same time. There is a lot of opportunity and a lot of places where you can fall. So be careful, mind your step, watch where you go, but most importantly, keep moving forward and keep taking the steps that you would like to take. Keep taking the steps that you need to take. Because the pain of regret hurts far more than the pain of action. So with that being said, keep thinking, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.